I've spent my entire life building something they never saw coming. My father slammed a thick manila folder onto my coffee table, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. Behind him, my mother and sister stood in the doorway, their eyes cold and calculating. Not a trace of love between them. They had used an emergency key to break into my home. And the audacity in the room was palpable. Suffocating. Open it. My mother's voice cracked with a tone she reserved for playing the victim. See what your selfishness actually costs. I didn't flinch. Instead, I opened the smart home app on my phone, deleted their user access, and locked the door. A quiet beep confirmed it once they walked out. They weren't coming back. It felt like justice. Even if the sound was small. The folder didn't contain a lawsuit. Not yet. Instead, it was a spreadsheet. Numbers detailing every single cost of raising me diapers. Formula. Mortgage. Utilities. I skimmed down the list, the total climbing higher until it hit a figure that made my stomach turn. $500,000 plus interest. You built this business on the foundation we provided, my father said, his voice steady, as though we were discussing a merger instead of an extortion plot. That wasn't free. Caitlin, it was an investment. I set the folder down, my eyes still locked on the total. My father's face was a mask of calm, but I could see the expectation in his eyes. He thought I'd buckle. It's time to pay what you owe, he said, as if this were a transaction. You don't understand. Caitlin, this isn't just money, it's our investment in your future. I stared at him, the words sinking in, but the shock was quickly replaced by something colder. Investment? I asked, keeping my voice steady, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. You call this an investment? You didn't invest in me. You raised me because you had to. The silence hung thick in the air, and my mother's voice cut through it. Tremulous and fake. You're just being ungrateful. After everything we've done for you. You act like we owe you nothing. It's only fair we get something back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're right, I said, my tone flat, almost too calm. It's fair. But what's fair is that you raised me. And now I don't owe you a damn thing. Not a dime. My father's jaw clenched. I could see his patience starting to wear thin. But he kept it together. A mask of calm authority. You think you can walk away from this? You think you've built all of this on your own? He looked me dead in the eye, his voice low but firm. You wouldn't have a business if it weren't for the roof we gave you. The food. The education. We've been the ones supporting you all this time. I shook my head, disbelief still creeping in. You're not entitled to a cut of my success, I said, finally standing up. I built this. Not you. My mother's eyes flared with fury, but she quickly masked it with a fake, sad smile. You're making a mistake. Caitlin, she said. We tried to be nice. But now we're doing this the hard way. Her words didn't scare me. They didn't even faze me. I'd been preparing for this moment for years. And now, the game was on. Then let's do it the hard way, I said, my voice steady, my resolve solidifying with every second. I didn't know what I expected when I opened the spreadsheet. But it wasn't this. The more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't a list of expenses, it was a story. A story of every way they tried to manipulate me. I scanned the rows. Diapers. Formula. Utilities. The numbers added up. But not in the way they should have. They'd been smart, covering their tracks with vague entries. But they hadn't counted on me being able to read between the lines. I called Darren immediately. I think I've found something, I said, voice tight. I need you to go through these numbers. There's something off. Darren didn't waste time asking questions. He just said, "Send it over. I'll take a look." He didn't take long. Within hours, Darren was back on the phone. "You were right," he said, the seriousness in his tone hitting me like a punch. "The tax returns don't match the numbers they've put here. And it's not just about you. They've been hiding money." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen. Everything suddenly making sense in a way I hadn't imagined. My parents hadn't been supporting me, they'd been siphoning from me. Using me as their shield. They've been skimming off the top. Darren continued. "They've been funneling money through your name to cover up their mess. And they think you're too naive to notice." I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of his words sink in. All these years, they had manipulated me, made me feel like I owed them something. But the truth was much darker. They had been using me to cover their tracks, all while pretending to be the generous parents. I leaned forward, my fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. "We need to get everything we can," I said, my voice colder than it had been before. "I need every document they've touched, every record they've tried to hide. I'm going to make sure they can't lie their way out of this." Darren's response was immediate. "I'll get started right away. I'll find everything they've been hiding." For the next few days, Darren worked tirelessly, pulling up old contracts, digging through bank records, and cross-referencing everything. The evidence built up slowly, piece by piece. But it was clear. They'd been living off my success, quietly taking from me, pretending they were entitled to it. When Darren finally called back with the full picture, I knew there was no turning back. "I've got it all," Darren said, his voice steady but laced with tension. "They've been using your name to cover up debts. They took loans out, and some of that money went straight into their pockets. They tried to cover it up with a fake investment in your future." I gripped the edge of my desk. The anger that had been simmering inside me for weeks finally boiled over. "I'm done playing their game," I said, my voice firm, with a calm that surprised even me. "We take them down. Darren. Every last one of them. It's time for them to face the consequences of their lies." Darren was silent for a moment, then spoke with a resolve that matched mine. "We'll go to the authorities. We'll get everything they've hidden, but we'll have to be strategic. We can't just go in blind." I knew he was right. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about exposing the truth. "I've been patient for too long," I said, thinking of all the years they had stolen from me. "But I'm done. It's time to take control of my life. And I'll make sure they pay for everything they've done." Darren agreed. And we began the process of gathering every shred of evidence. Every lie they had ever told. Every step we took brought us closer to the truth. Closer to a confrontation I knew would be inevitable. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them ruin me anymore. The war wasn't over yet. But it was just beginning. And this time, I would win. I walked into the courtroom with my head high, but my chest tight. My father and mother sat across the room, their expressions composed, as though they had everything under control. They didn't. I had all the evidence I needed, and I was ready to make them pay for everything they had done. "Miss Stone," the judge said, looking at me with a serious expression, "are you prepared to proceed?" I nodded, my hand steady. "Yes, Your Honor, I am ready." I could feel my father's gaze on me, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid anymore. "You've built a nice little empire." "Caitlin," my father said, his voice dripping with mock admiration, "but you've forgotten the people who helped you get there." I didn't hesitate. "I didn't forget anything," I said, my voice low and controlled. "You didn't help me get here. You used me. And now you'll pay for it." My mother's voice cut through the tension. "You're being unreasonable," she said, her tone shaky but laced with false sadness. "We've done so much for you, Caitlin. And this is how you repay us?" I shook my head, the anger that had been building inside me finally breaking through. "You didn't do anything for me," I said, my voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "You used me, manipulated me, and now you want to take everything I've worked for." The judge glanced at both of us, but it was clear she had heard enough. "Please, let's focus on the facts," she said. Darren, my lawyer, stepped forward with a file in his hand. "Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that the plaintiff's claims are not only exaggerated but completely false," he said, his voice calm but firm. The room went silent as Darren laid out the documents. "They've been using Caitlin's name to hide their debts and divert money from their business. These records show a clear pattern of financial mismanagement and fraud." I watched as my parents' faces went pale. My father's jaw tightened. But there was no denying it. The evidence was right in front of them. "You're accusing us of stealing from you?" my father growled, his anger rising. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "No, you didn't. You took from me. You thought I wouldn't notice. But I did." My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, his confidence slipping. "You're just angry because we're asking for what we're owed," he said. But his words lacked conviction. Darren didn't back down. "Your Honor," he said, his tone cold and precise. "We've also discovered that Mr. Stone has been using company funds to cover personal debts. This isn't just about Caitlin's so-called debt. It's about a pattern of fraud that has been ongoing for years." The room seemed to freeze. My father's face turned an unnatural shade of white. My mother's eyes darted around the room. But she didn't speak. "Is this true, Mr. Stone?" the judge asked, her voice sharp. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked defeated. The judge turned to me. "Miss Stone," she said, her voice steady. "This is a serious accusation, but it seems clear that there has been significant financial misconduct here." I held my breath as the judge looked at the evidence one last time. "This case will be referred to the appropriate authorities for further investigation," she said, slamming her gavel down. "I am also ruling in favor of Miss Stone in this matter. The claims made by the plaintiffs are dismissed." My father stared at the judge, his face contorted with rage. But there was nothing he could do. The fight was over. My parents were defeated. I felt the weight of everything they had tried to do to me. And now it was done. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "This court is adjourned," she said. My father didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the table in front of him. My mother's face was a mask of disbelief, her tears a mix of anger and frustration. But it was over. The battle had been won, and I had taken back control. As I walked out of the courtroom, I could feel the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. The people who had tried to destroy me were finally facing the consequences of their actions, and I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. The court ruling was final, and as my parents walked out, their shoulders slumped. I didn't feel victorious. There was no elation, no sense of triumph. It was just over. My father's smugness had crumbled. My mother's tears were empty, and the weight of their betrayal had finally been acknowledged. Darren turned to me as we stood there, the courtroom doors closing behind us. "It's done. Caitlin, you did it." His words felt distant, as if I were hearing them from a faraway place. "Yeah," I muttered, my eyes still focused on the empty space where my parents had just stood. "I guess I did. I do." As we walked outside into the bright daylight, I felt the years of tension and anxiety slip away. The air felt lighter, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't joy. It was relief from the weight of being manipulated for so long. I had won. But what had I really won? Take a moment. Caitlin, Darren said, as if reading my thoughts. You're free now. His words settled over me, slowly sinking in. Yeah, I guess I am, I replied, finally looking him in the eye. It's over. Time to move on. The future felt different now. It was my own again. And no one could take that from me. Later that evening, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen, but I didn't answer. The voicemail chimed in. Caitlin, I know this is hard, but we're family. Please, let's talk. I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I hit delete. The past was behind me now, and I wasn't looking back. It was time to build a future on my terms. Thank you for following this journey. If you've ever fought to take back control, you know how hard it can be. But remember, you have the power to change your own story. Share this with anyone who needs to hear it and never let anyone take what's yours.